From meeting room wisdom to bestseller lists, changemakers to chapter ones, this is where expertise meets legacy. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. And this is an episode we're going to be diving deep into the minds of writers who are reshaping their fields and inspiring others to do the same. Today, we're joined by Renzo del Castillo, an award-winning poet whose journey from healthcare professional to literary voice speaks to the power of following one's calling. His collection of Still, which is a collection of poems, has not only topped American's bestseller lists, but also earned prestigious recognition for its contribution to cultural understanding and community building. So Renzo's work beautifully demonstrates how art can bridge cultural divides and create deeper human connections. And today we're going to be diving deep into his writing process, his inspiration, and also how he got his foot out there. So Renzo, without further ado, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's quite an honor. I mean, we're always happy to have, an amazing poet here on the team because it's actually interesting. We work with a lot of nonfiction books, and this book is, in its own way nonfiction, but it's also poems. It goes deep into, it makes you think, and it's all about inspirational messages behind it. So a little bit of a different category. I'm excited to dive into the process it takes you to write that. And also, we're very happy to have you on because you've also, worked with us before, and, we're very happy to, talk a little bit about that as well. So, without further ado, if you don't mind, perhaps we can start off today. If you can give everybody listening a little bit of a background to who you are, how you came to be here, and, what inspired you to write this book of poems.
Sure. I'm a Libra. I enjoy walks on... No, look, the poetry has always been a part of my life. My grandmother was an opera singer, university professor, activist. I learned how to read at a very early age. So my parents and my grandparents, my family always just inculcated a love of books and literature. But my grandmother at the beginning was specifically poetry, César Vallejo, Pablo Neruda, these Latin American poets, Rubén Darío. And then as my family and I immigrated to the United States when I was about 5 years old, and then Shel Silverstein, when you're a kid, Dr. Seuss, and then you go on from there, right? So poetry has always been a part of my life. I started writing poetry in high school. I had a cousin of mine who sadly is no longer with us. He passed away a couple of years ago. He was in this rap group called Soul What? Pablo. His name was Pablo Vendaño. And we were both in an AP English, and he's like, dude, just, you're great at writing, right? And I'm like, I don't know about writing, and I don't know what I have to say. And it's like, you have stuff to say, just say it. And so I started doing that. But I ended up going to college for aerospace engineering. I went to University of Florida. And once there, about 6 credits short from graduating, I switched to poetry, much to the delight of my immigrant parents. And it was just, I was always fascinated by how things worked, how to put things together and take them apart. And poetry helped me appreciate that they worked at all, that they existed at all. And it was a very big shift in framework for me. But, I'm 41 years old. So when this happened after, in 2006, and I got into a grad program over the summer in Cambridge. But as I mentioned, it was after September 11th. The people who blew up the towers had student visas. When I immigrated here, I had a student visa. I knew of 2 people who were deported, but they weren't terrorists, who went to study abroad. So my parents had a talk with me, and they said, how about you finish here? I said, okay, no, I get it. I was heartbroken, but I got it. And I ended up doing mass communications, journalism, School of Journalism, right? At that time, still UF had the number 2 or number 3 ranked school in the country for that program. And I was already there, so it seemed like a no-brainer, and it had the technical aspects of engineering that I enjoyed, but it had the communication aspect of poetry that I loved. So I did that, and then I graduated in 2009, which was the year of the financial bubble, the housing bubble. So nobody I went to school with ended up doing anything they went to school for. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, I was an immigrant. I grew up as an immigrant, so I was very preoccupied with money because money equals safety. So what could I do to make money? And in my opinion, there are two industries in the United States that benefit from inefficiency: law and healthcare. The worse you are at it, the more money they give you, right? To do something about it. So I ended up working at a call center for a healthcare company, and within a week I was doing projects for them. And from then on, I ended up, becoming a project manager, then a consultant, then eventually took on a people leader role and became an executive. And I've been in the healthcare field for about 15 years. And recently my position was eliminated, so I've focused on poetry and also some consulting on the side. But, some people ask me, are you an executive or are you a poet? And I'm like, I'm Renzo. All of these are aspects of my personality, right? Like communicating, art, all of that has a role to play in team building, communication, getting a project out there. It's bridging gaps. So I hope I wasn't too long-winded, but I think that answers your question, I hope.
No, I'm glad that you were long-winded, because that's, the reason I asked that, because, if it weren't for that good backstory, all our listeners say would be like, okay, who is this Renzo guy? But you just, because I love what you said, that one last line where you were like, are you an executive or you're a poet? Because, it's something that a lot of our listeners say are probably wondering themselves. They're running a business, they're, busy all day long, but they have that, spark in their mind, that itch to write something just like you did, right? And it's silly to ask somebody, which are you, when you could just be both, one and the same. You're the prime example of it. It's very interesting that you've done all these things in your life, and still also you have like this poetic edge too, and you were able to follow that dream and make it happen. That's something a lot of us would want to do.
Yeah, well, it's necessary, right? I think poetry art creates an analytical relationship between yourself and an object. By definition, that builds empathy. You're seeing things from somebody else's perspective. You're imagining what the artist thought. You're taking your experience, your life experience, which is your lens, to view these works of art, to view a movie, to hear a song, to read a poem, and then you're adding meaning to it. So the more languages you learn, the more art you're exposed to, the better you are at bridging gaps of understanding, the better you are at seeing things from others' perspective, and that allows for collaboration and achieving a goal. It's dialectical realism, right? Think of theory of montage. So you have an image of a sleeping baby, then you see an image of a barking dog, and then you see an image of a crying baby. The backgrounds could be completely different. It could be even a different baby, right? From the first to the second image that you see. But your mind creates this narrative, right? Thesis, original idea. Antithesis, opposing idea. Synthesis, new idea. In your mind, you saw those images. The sleeping baby was awakened by the barking dog, right? And that's how you start creating meaning and moving through things. And that's how you start communicating with people.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, just sort of like the way your mind associates certain, images and phrases with, exactly what you wouldn't quite expect, like that, like the crying baby example. And I can see how, as you wrote your poems, that's exactly how it goes. You you sent me your book actually yesterday, and I was just flipping through it, and it was actually really nice because, for me it was a Monday night, it was late, and then I got to kind of put aside the business books that I usually work with, and I got to curl up in my heated blanket, and I was just flipping through your poems, and let me tell you, it was such a nice experience just to relax.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and one, I love the way that you have so many different styles of them. Like from English and Spanish. That's one question I have for you. Do you find it challenging to write in two different languages? Are there any conflicts when it comes to like finding the right word in one language that maybe doesn't exist in another? What's that like to alternate between both in your writing?
Yes and no. And I believe there's also like a French poem in there, right? And there's some with Portuguese words. And I
Mm.
also used to know Italian. The reason for that is that they all make up my life experience. So when it comes to switching from these languages, I'm a native Spanish speaker, but I grew up in the US. I came here when I was 5 years old. So sometimes when I think in English. If I'm angry, I think in Spanish. It's interesting, like these different aspects of it. And the Spanish poems and the French poem that's included in the collection was originally written in that language. So for some reason, something inspired me or something triggered this desire to write in that language, to express myself in that. And then I added the English translation to it because it's not stick it in Google Translate and put it out there. There's an art to it. It doesn't, a literal translation doesn't try to convey the same meaning. When I write in different languages, it's just accessing different experiences, making sure that I'm able to convey the emotion of the thing, because you have what's written down on the page, but you also have universality. So for example, maybe a Spanish poem that I write is accessible or to a select few people who speak Spanish, right? But when I translate it or I move it to English, like the themes that were in Spanish are universal, which shows that interconnectivity between all of us. So it's also a mental exercise, right? Like the more language, again, I believe the more languages you know, the better you are at solving problems, seeing things from different perspectives, empathizing with different people, accepting points of view that are not just your own. So going through that, it helps that I'm fluent in those languages, but it also is a tool to express yourself, right? Think about it as arrows in your quiver. Which one are you going to use, right? It's a toolkit, but at the end of the day, you're still trying to hit a target.
I love that you used that even at the end, that metaphor right there, arrows in your quiver. I mean, it's exactly right. I mean, the more words you know, the more language you know, the more you understand the connection between different languages and linguistics and all of that. I mean, that definitely plays a part in the poetry of it. And it's interesting because I think a lot of us these days don't quite think of it like that. I mean, we have AI these days where you just plug it in and it gives you like a whole
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and then
That's true.
here you are thinking of what's the hidden meaning behind this word I'm putting on the page? But it's another example as to how you always need that human element. Different topic altogether, but I like that you said that because it's a benefit over a challenge. I guess is what we're saying here. You're able to use it to your advantage.
Well, think about the times, and I'll ask you a few questions. Like, think about the times your imagination, right? Like, do you think you could imagine flight if you had never seen a bird, right? I think the more you're exposed to, the more your imagination has a basis to expand and grow. But the more you know, the more references you have. How are you going to know what evil is without knowing good, what light is without knowing dark, right? So it's this exposure to different cultures, this exposure to different works of art, to different pieces of art that have come before us, I think is instrumental in building a foundation that you can then leap. I'm a very big believer that discipline allows for freedom, right? Sometimes it's like a paradox, like it might not. What do you mean like being disciplined allows you to be free? So think about it this way. If you have a solid foundation for the work that you're doing, think about it in terms of mathematics, like geometry, algebra, calculus. That foundation and knowledge allows you to go into differential equations and abstract mathematics, which is just, right? It's a whole new world. If you know math, you know how to write music, and then you can, create all these different sounds. So it's about exposure. Me, I had the benefit of I went to school for it. I switched my major for it. So I've been exposed to ghazals and sonnets and pantoums and different, one of my favorite poets is Wisława Szymborska, who is a Polish Nobel laureate. How would I have ever been exposed to her if I didn't get exposed to other poems and other poetic forms, right? Like I wouldn't have picked up a Wisława Szymborska book on a Miami bookstore typically. So it's just, again, it's about exposure, but I'm sorry, please go on.
Oh no, I mean, please, I love when we get onto these examples because, I mean, this is a tip that everybody listening right now can take home with them because, you know, in order to become a better writer or better at anything, you need to open your mind to things and experience new things, learn new things. And I mean, you've dabbled in so many different fields that you have a wide range of knowledge. So, you know, one tip, if you want to be a better writer, go learn more things, go explore more things, because you'll never know sort of like what's going to end up in your brain that you can use as a tool later on as you're writing.
So, want to be a chef? Go eat food, right? Like go try these things that you're passionate about and love, and see where it takes you. See what you have to say about it, right? Yeah,
definitely. But you know, kind of going back to the idea of like using multiple languages in your poems. I actually have pulled up a couple of poems that really caught my eye in your book when I was reading them. And, you know, one of them, and I'm so sorry if I butchered the language, the first one is prana, which, you know, they lie on the ground side by side in twisted balsana, that it begins like that. And then the other one, you know, side by side to it in your book is Lisboa.
Lisboa. So Praha, it was a trip I took that year. I stayed in Prague and I stayed in Lisbon, among other places. And I just was inspired by it. So I used the name that is used by people who live there. But it's very different. Like it's, so one thing I don't like to do is tell people what I was thinking when I write a poem, right? Because I don't want to rob them of the experience of analyzing it themselves and adding meaning to it. So I'll give you an example. There's another one, I think, in that series towards the end that's called Bali. It was about, I went to Bali and I tried it. And I read that poem at an open mic, and I had a number of people come up to me, but two stand out. One said, "What an amazing poem about sensuality and love and travel and wanderlust and all that stuff." And then another person said, "What a stalwart critique of capitalism and colonialism and just like the loss of identity through development." And I said, yes, and yes. There are elements to it. I had a completely different thing in my mind, maybe, or I was adding aspects of all of those things, but their interpretations made the conversation so much more interesting, right? But when it came to Praha, I was inspired because I live in Miami. We have a pretty big homeless problem. There's a lot of people that unfortunately don't have housing, whether it be for financial reasons or mental health reasons. And it's grown exponentially since in the last 10 to 15 years. And when I went to Prague, there were a lot of Romani, Gypsy people that were homeless. And I was just, Prague has a lot of statues. And I was just amazed at how still they could be when begging for money. And it just moved me to write that. And then Lisboa, it was about just discovering the city. There's many places like it, but I was struck in Lisbon with how every corner you turn to is a secret grotto or a little garden in a courtyard, as if, I think I said it in the poem, like as if the city is whispering its poetry into your ear everywhere that you go and every experience that you have. But there's other aspects to it that we can go into it. I'm curious to see what you got out of it, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, for some reason, like I just got this idea of like, you know, memory and place. Like, and I think, you know, I mentioned that to you in my email actually. Like for some reason, like I can see like, you know, your perception of how you saw like, you know, like being led by the cobblestones, asking to be experienced, right? And then like, that's just like, you know, your place and time. But then, you know, it kind of, I mean, I don't know if you meant for these to mirror each other in the way that I saw them. Maybe that's just the way they put them next to each other on the book too. Because they're together, I sort of thought about that. Because the one to me seems more like about your place. And then Prana is more so, you know, you have the whole line where it goes 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, and then you got your time. So time, place, memory. To me, that's sort of how it, you know, resonated. But, you know, it's funny that you mentioned, you know, anybody who talks to you about your poems seems to have a little bit of a different take on it. And, you know, Do you feel like any type of way, I guess, when people start to say something about your poem and you feel like that is not what I was getting at? Or do you kind of usually accept what they're saying? I mean, maybe what I just said completely like baffles you or not, I don't know, but I guess I'm curious because a lot of people listening right now might feel the same way when, people read their books. So, what's your take on it?
My take on it is, before I decided to publish this collection of poems, I made my peace with the fact they don't belong to me anymore. If I decide to put it out there, someone's going to take it, look at it, and make it into whatever it is that they want to make it. And sometimes that says more about them than me. But I am overjoyed to at least spark the beginning of that internal conversation for them, right? I love that you went to the role of memory and place, right? I have the book right here, so.
Oh yeah, please hold it up, everyone.
Sure.
There it is.
So if you see the cover of the book, it's for those of you who were alive in the 90s, everybody had this like Sears or Woolworth's family portrait studio 90s background picture of themselves. And the reason that I chose it as the cover of my book, and in the marketing of the book, I used the Polaroid motif. So when it was promoted on social media, it was when I shared, for example, Praha, there was a picture of Prague, not necessarily of a homeless person begging, but a picture of Prague, a Polaroid of different cities or different moments, etc. And the reason I chose this was that everybody has an inflection point in their life, a threshold space of what came before and what came after. That picture for me, Peru was before, because I was born in Lima, Peru. Miami, Florida was after. And my family in that moment was never the same again, for good or ill, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It was just the nostalgia aspect. And when you look at memory, it's a powerful tool for navigating between past and present. You use memory to reconstruct and revisit moments from your life. But how accurate are they? It's your perception of them, right? Let's say you and I were friends and we went to a party. Years from now, you're going to remember the party one way, your way. I'll remember the party my way. And somewhere in between is what actually happened at the party. It doesn't mean that your recollection is any less valid to you, right? My recollection is not any less valid to me. And place also has a significant impact on how you perceive yourself. For example, for me, Miami was a space of belonging. I consider myself somebody who is Miamian because I grew up here, but it's also a place of alienation. I had to immigrate. Growing up, I was too Peruvian for the Americans, too American for the Peruvians. When I celebrate Christmas, I open my presents at 12 at night because that's when Santa Claus came for us instead of waking up in the morning. But I watch Die Hard every morning, right, as a Christmas movie, as a tradition that I created, because it's almost like a buffet that I can just take and choose what aspects I want. And then memory and place help you take aspects of yourself and have them coexist. It's more than just geography, right? It's tied to emotional and cultural landmarks that influence how we move through the world. So in terms of promoting the book, in terms of tying it to poems, I also think poems are a snapshot. That's what I wrote at that moment in time. I wouldn't write the same thing now. I'm not the same person. The book is composed of poems that I did in college, through the writing workshops that I did, the ones that got me into that program in Cambridge, to things I did, and then I stopped writing for years until my dad became sick and passed away from pancreatic cancer, and then I started writing again as a form of therapy. And when I looked at some of the early poems, I cringe. And then I'm like, why? Why am I cringing? It's who I was at that time, and I need to accept and love me for who I was at that time. And I think we can use memory to be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I like that you kind of went on a little bit of a rant there, but the way that we did that,
I do that, yeah.
not, it's a good thing though, especially for this kind of show, because one, we're getting deep into the mind of, what it took to write this book. And also it's giving us some, valuable information about what it means to write poetry, because a lot of people listening right now, they're trying to think about what's my book going to be. I want to get these ideas across. I want to promote my brand or my business, for example. And it's interesting, I think, because, memory has a huge part to play in whatever type of book you're writing. I like that you said it's about, more than just your vision at the time, because later on you might not have the same ideas and the same vision. It's funny because you usually tell people try to keep your message evergreen, something else, still be relevant like 10 years down the road. But these kind of things, it can be interpreted by anybody, whatever the situation might be. So in that way, by nature, it is evergreen. So I like that you said that. It's something to kind of think about.
Thank you.
So yeah, now my question to you is, you wrote this book of poems, you got it out there, you got it published. What happened next? What was your experience? From what I understand, you needed a little bit of support to kind of, get other people to check it out and really get it to that bestseller list. Tell us about that process. What was that like?
Sure. So I mentioned before that when I didn't go to Cambridge, I was heartbroken. I had images of myself like a long-haired hippie in England writing poetry, right? But and then I went and became extremely practical. As I mentioned, my dad became sick, and we all actually moved in back to my childhood home and took care of him. And they gave him 3 months. He lasted 3 years, 2.5 without morphine. He was out there in the backyard doing kettlebells. That was, he did very well, and it was a gift. But when I started writing again after he passed, I actually had some friends from middle school, college that work in the arts, and they're like, "Oh, you're starting to write again? Great. I've had this plan ready for you. You're going to submit to these journals. These are the lower tier journals. These are the mid tier journals. These are the big journals. If you get one published poem here, then you need to do 2 more to get a book deal, blah, blah, blah." Like it was so laid out. I'm like, when did you guys have this, right? So I started submitting to journals and doing that. And as I was doing that, I was writing new things because I started becoming active in the Miami poetry community. And there were open mics and all of that. And there's this influx of creativity and sharing of ideas, kind of like a School of Athens scenario, right? Well, enough material came to where I could write a book. And then through this, I met an independent publisher. Her name is Flor Mireles. She runs this place called Indie Earth Publishing here in Miami. She worked in traditional publishing houses and was disillusioned with the business aspect of it and wanted to give, local authors a chance to publish things themselves, but with the support of a publisher. And I love the idea of building community. That's always been important to me, and that's something that I was trying to do. A little segue, I was recently in Dublin, and Dublin is the city of W.B. Yeats, Seamus Heaney, Oscar Wilde, James Joyce, right? It's considered a literary hub in the world. And Miami has a reputation for being young, perhaps a bit materialistic and superficial, a place where you vacation, but all of the big ticket items that are happening in the world right now are happening in Miami, right? Like immigration reform, female reproductive rights, Medicaid, Medicare fraud, like all of these big items are happening here, and there are people who have a voice. Why can't we be like Dublin? Why not? So building community is important. So I with them, but Flora will be the first to tell you, she was on her 2nd year running her own company. She wasn't great at the marketing. She got it published, but there was disconnects of working with Ingram Spark, disconnects of working with Amazon. If any of your audience are authors and they work with Amazon, that whoever runs it is an AI. In my opinion, because you can't get a straight answer when you're trying to fix the cover of your book, for example. You uploaded the right image, but then it has a line through it, etc., and so forth. As a matter of fact, the paperback in my book has a line through it that shouldn't be there, and I still haven't got it solved.
No way.
So, it's a thing, right? So as I was going through this in terms of the marketing of the book, Flora admitted, she said straight up, like, this is not my forte. I did okay marketing it locally and did well, but a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who I believe also worked with you guys, Esther Zeladon, connected me with Vikrant. And Vikrant's we hit it off right away. He's a great guy. And he said, well, we've never really worked with poets before, and also you already have your book published, but we can grow together. Cool. That's cool for me. So we engaged in doing the Amazon bestseller, the #1 bestseller in a couple of categories, getting us verified reviews, getting me on the podcast circuit to promote the book and the audiobook, which I mentioned to you before. He's like, yeah, we'll charge you this, but you should do the book, and we'll charge you less, but you do it because you have a voice for this, you have a face for radio or whatever. And then it was just a very seamless, there were some hiccups in terms of getting the vision or getting things done expediently, but the team worked together. They were always on top of it, and communication is the important thing, right? I can't just be like, oh, I want to publish a book. Well, what does that mean? What's your goal? Do you want to sell 5,000? Then maybe you should do the Authors on Mission New York Times bestseller option, right? But then know that comes with an investment. Or do you want to just get your stuff out there and start promoting it? Then you have different options. You have to know what targets are so that you can help your partners hit that target, if that makes sense, right? It goes back to what I was talking about poetry. It's communication. And just a great experience. I remember working with Jana. I don't know. We've never spoken, so I don't know how she pronounces her name. In terms of the podcast, then it was so expedient and professional in terms of like, here's what we're getting, here's what you're looking for, here's what we can get you to do. And I had a great experience working for it. But what I will tell people that are going through that or trying to decide, know what it is that you want so that people can help you get there. You don't have to do it on your own. This idea that we are Ayn Rand individuals that achieve everything by ourselves is a fallacy. You had a mother, if you're lucky enough to have a mother. Somebody fed you when you were a baby. Somebody gave you your favorite book, like somebody gave you a hand sometimes. All of that has put you on the path to do this. So take advantage of people that are there to help you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, just really wonderful that you were able to take what you put out there. It was a piece of work that, had so much heart into it, a combination of everything you've learned from your past, in addition to your family's influence too. And, I just wanted to kind of go back to that because I noticed, every time you talk about your family, and especially your father, I know you went through some really hard times, but I could see in your voice the way, like, even now, like, mentioning it, like, it resonates with you. So clearly there's a lot of heart and soul in this book of poems. So all of that, you get it out there. You want to make sure people are reading it and picking it up and also experiencing the same, emotions that you're feeling and, the power behind it and feeling it for themselves. So that's why it was so important for you to find a way to keep the word out and getting people to read the book. So I'm glad that, us at Authors on Mission were able to help you and you were able to promote it on your own too. I mean, that's why we're so flexible. You were able to do a bunch on your end, we did some on our end. You kind of pick and choose whatever you need, and we were able to, here you are now, bestseller. And now that it's bestseller status, I mean, what are you up to now? Now that you have your name on that, how has it impacted your life or, your businesses, everything you've been doing? Have you seen a lot of feedback?
Yeah, so at least here in the community, I've seen a lot. For an independent poetry book, I think we have around, it debuted about 1.5 years ago. I think it has around 600 to 700 units sold in combination, paperback, hardcover, audio for a poetry book, which is niche, independently published. That's pretty good. I've seen a lot of social media interaction. I've been asked to headline poetry sections of music and art festivals. I think I have one coming up. I don't remember the details. I just got the email recently. Submitting to the International Poetry Festival, a workshop in Rotterdam, and let's see if that goes. Definitely have a lot of people in the Miami community, not just poetry community, have asked me to host their book launches because they like the model of mine, right? When I did my book launch, I had 12 poets from the community. They all said yes, which is very rare, especially in Miami, and they all arrived on time, which is really cool. And they all came and just at the book launch read their favorite poem from my book in their style, which was a gift to me because I wouldn't have read it their way. Right? It was this really interesting thing, and it was cool because they brought their audience of the people that follow them, and then they got my audience that is like, oh, these people are interesting. Let me see what they're doing. And it was this whole collaborative thing. So definitely has been great for taxes, right? In terms of like losses and stuff like that. But also it's been good. But also it's opened up a lot of doors in terms of collaborating with other artists. Because of it, I was able to go to the Telluride Film Festival as an example, through a connection that I made, like really cool things that I've been doing, right? And it's also helped me understand myself more. I mean, you mentioned maybe my voice changing a bit when I start talking about my family. That's why the book is called Still. It's multiple meanings, right? So when I wrote the book, when I actually sat down and put the book together from old poems, new poems, etc., I was at a period in my life where I thought life had stopped giving me things and started taking them away, which is not true, but emotionally that's how I felt. My dad had passed away from pancreatic cancer. My grandmother his mom had died a couple of years before. My cousin that I mentioned was run over by an SUV. My little cousin had heart failure. My best friend's mom died from cancer. A number of colleagues and friends had also passed away. My dog died around that time. Pearl, I had a boxer. I had her for 14 years. The relationship I thought was going to evolve into marriage also ended around that time. And I realized, I might have mentioned, like think about your favorite book. So my favorite food, the movies I love, the books that I love, the songs that I love, they showed that to me. The reason I comb my hair this way is my grandfather. My half smile when I smirk is my dad. Like my love of poetry is my grandmother. We are made up of all the little pieces of everybody we've ever loved and that has loved us. And if that's true, then they're still here. They're still with me. And I wanted to put these thoughts, these themes. It's not necessarily a literal history of my family, but it's a thematic history of everybody that influenced me, everybody that I've loved, everybody that has had an impact. And I'm somebody who, when my dad passed away, I'm like, let me handle the probate stuff. Let me handle this. Let me handle that. And I needed a checklist. And when the checklist was done, I had to be still and process all that and see the reflection of what that was, right? The word captures the tension between movement and stillness, which can also be addressed with the immigrant experience, right? You feel suspended physically in a new place, but maybe emotionally and culturally caught between other worlds.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned to me that, when it comes to that, it's more even than just displacement, but more about, redefining your identity and creating connections and, taking all that and building something positive out of it, no matter how terrible it is. And I have to say, I'm really sorry that, all that happened, especially at the time of writing a book. Sometimes I'm sure, when people ask you about these poems, maybe that's why you don't want to talk about the meaning behind it.
No, I'm happy to talk about my dad.
But it brings up so I get it. I do.
I mean, even if I get misty-eyed, right? And I'm sorry for cutting you off. No, I didn't mean to. I think Andrew Garfield had like an interview where he said, like, talking about my mom, his mom passed away as well, is just like, it's all this unexpressed love. This grief is all this unexpressed love. I share that feeling, right? It made me who I am. I'm happy to talk about it. Just because I get a little emotional doesn't mean that there's pain, but there's joy too, right? I think we, as maybe not just in America and all the other cultures that I've been introduced to and friends that I have around the world, like there's this concept that you have negative emotions. There's a whole like Instagram influencer industry about like, oh, let's have positive thinking and like none of this negative stuff. But anger leads to release. Guilt leads to redemption. Like these are things that we are going to go through. Why limit it? Just don't get dominated by them. Don't let them lead you, but feel the things that you feel, because if not, you're just going to repress these things, and who knows when you're going to blow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I can see how, through this book and through like sharing this, you're able to kind of cultivate these messages in other people. And, you mentioned to me too that you've actually been getting involved in these, community building projects to help, connect people in these types of ways. Would you like to share a little bit about that, these projects that you're doing?
Yeah, we touched upon it a little. We touched upon it a little bit. I've been doing, over a dozen book releases for other people. I've let me to some great friends. I've mentioned the workshops that I'm putting together with a friend of mine, Scott Raven, Scott with 3 T's. That's how you spell his name. I have a podcast that I want to begin where I talk to people about different professionals about what art means in their lives. That's working on that. I'm working on a new book as well, and then working on other poems outside the book. The concept of the book right now is I research, as much as I know about poetry, I know enough to know I don't know much at all. So I've researched, I think, around 166 different styles of poetry, and I'm going through the exercise of writing in that style, right? Which can be challenging but fun, just to stretch those muscles, and that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
So if somebody wanted to, become involved in that as well, or check it out, is it available to anybody right now, or how would they be able to find more information?
Sure. I mean, you can find me on all social media platforms. People have reached out, and I've connected them with other people that I know that I'm like, hey, they might hit it off, right? So you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok as Renzo del Castillo, my name, .author. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn because I do have a professional presence, as we talked about before, under my name, Renzo del Castillo. You can go to www.renzodelcastillo.com and just reach out. And if I know you're not a bot or a psychopath, I'm happy to engage with you and talk shop. I'm thrilled and so energized by discussing art or discussing like who we are. Like if God exists, right, it's between us, Danielle, communicating, talking. That's where the divinity lies, right? And I want to be exposed to as much of that as possible.
Oh, absolutely. And so, guys, if this is inspiring to you, if these messages today resonate with you, because, it really all should. The ideas of memory that we've talked about today, the ideas about, how knowing more about different languages plays a part in your writing, every tip that we touch upon, it matters in your writing and your business and whatever in life. So going to these workshops can help you learn more about these things. And also to connect with other writers in the community. That's always a plus too. You mentioned yourself, you're able to find some connections just by doing that as well in the past. So, just check out Renzo's stuff, and also just, be prepared, of course, to prove some identity that you're not a robot or an AI. But we'll put some links in the descriptions, and we'll be ready to promote that as well. So guys, check it out right now. You can probably pause the podcast, and right there's going to be the links. So, before we head off today, though, Renzo, I'm wondering, do you have any last pieces of advice that you want to share with our audience today, whether it be about poetry or about marketing your book, or any last little pieces of homework to leave them off with today? What do you think?
Create. Like, so many people tear things down in this world. Be someone who creates, right? Like, go out, experience. So, for example, there's poets that are not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to go talk smack about them. I'll look into, well, they have a great use of syntax. Like, what do you find useful? What do you find interesting about their work? Why? And also, like, if I don't like it, why is it that producing that emotional response in me? there's value in that, right? Be open to things, go out there, eat good food, love, meet people, talk. If you're going to live this life, go ahead and live it. Don't be a spectator, right? And then I think art stems from that. The reason I say this is not to keep it in general terms, because if you're in a position where you're out there and experiencing life, then you're going to have things, opinions that you want to share and that you want to say, and that's going to help you create, write your book, get over any blockage. Like sometimes I'll give you an example, and I won't take too long. So I was at a dinner the other day, and somebody said, "Oh, I poetry seems cool, but it's just not for me. It seems intimidating." And I lost it. I'm like, "No, what are you talking about? It's inclusive. Art should be inclusive. Art belongs to everyone. It's not for this idea in your head that you have of some elites that read poetry. Maybe Shakespeare's not for you, but maybe William Carlos Williams is for you, right? Maybe Wisława Szymborska, as I mentioned, is for you. Like, there's so many different people from so many different areas that have written these things and have put them out there, right? Like, I remember I was just reading about Allen Ginsberg and how he wrote Howl, and that went to trial for not having any literary merit and being obscene, and then no, this is important. And it was by a judge declared that this has literary merit and should not be censored, right? It's important to go out there and experience life so that you have something to say. And if you will allow me a moment of vanity, I'd like to share one poem with you from the collection.
That too, yeah.
I wrote it first in Spanish, but I wrote it in English. And again, this is a poem where people are like, "Oh, what a great love poem." But other people said, "Is it about falling in love with your roots, with yourself?" So if you don't mind, I'll share it to you. It's called, I'll do it in English. I'll do it in English. It's called A Song to Victory. Falling in love with you is falling in love in Spanish. It's to remember the sun's warmth and the embrace of my native land. It's to taste the flavor of pisco and brandy, of the grape and the agave. Falling in love with you is to flesh out the impossible. It's to ask God to stop the moon and make tonight the eternal companion of your beauty. It's to pray and receive an answer. Falling in love with you is to seduce passion. It is to drink in the movement of your hips, sensual and caramelized. It is to be reborn in the light of your eyes when you laugh, and to sacrifice myself before your kiss. Falling in love with you is to dance with my luck. It's to swim in the ocean of your chaos and to rejoice in the disorder. It is to free my soul's smile from its prejudices before the smell of your hair. Falling in love with you is the privilege of hope. It's to lay down on your eyelashes in order to delight your tears. It is to sow a garden of dreams and sunflowers and gift you bouquets. Falling in love with you is to begin to love myself. It's to build a home in the space between your collarbone and your bosom. It's to write a poem in the Caribbean so you know how I feel. That poem means something to me because, again, not going into exactly what I meant when but it speaks to me to a union, to a bridge between two different ideologies, different frameworks of seeing the world. How many times have we been in situations where we felt despair and didn't know what was going to happen because we saw the world this way, and then we walked through a door and then all these other options were presented to us. All we had to do was be open to walk forward. And that's a reminder to me as well, right? I go through things where I could despair. But as long as you're moving, as long as you're breathing, there's always tomorrow. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you guys.
Thank you for honoring us with that. And guys, I mean, if that made you tear up or made you feel yeah, because I mean, I was looking at his poems too, and let me tell you, it's it's powerful stuff, but it's also something like I told you. I had my nice heated blanket. I was sitting there and enjoying every one of them, and So check out this book, and in this poem in particular, I mean, listening to it, you think it's about well, on the surface layer, some lovers, right? But based on this conversation and what you just said as well, it's more so about coming together as people and embracing culture and identity and all that. So there's all these layers to it, which one, inspires us, and two, based on we can become better writers by reading these, understanding these concepts and ideas behind it. So check it out, guys. Read it for yourselves. Take all this advice to heart. Renzo, thank you for joining us. I mean, it's been a pleasure. We don't get a lot of poem books on the podcast to talk about and enjoy like another genre here. It's amazing. So we really appreciate it. We thank you for joining us today.
I want to thank you for taking the time to share your platform with me, for listening intently and with interest, for me looking at you and seeing you're not on your phone, right? Like, it's for taking the time to communicate with me and sharing your space. I've heard some other episodes. I appreciate your facilitation style. You make it very conversational. You make it very comfortable for us to come out here and just bare our souls and share, right? So thank you for that. And one last thing I'll mention is you can find there's a reason I'm saying this is not just self-promotion. You can find the book on Amazon and places where you sell it, but I made the Kindle $1, and I'm not changing it, because if I could make it $0, I would. There are people that may want poetry books, and right now, the economy being what it is, they might not have access to it. So it should always be accessible. So if you want it, you want to check it out, but you don't have much money, it's out there for $1, right? So just in case, if you want to get your hands on some poetry.
Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful and generous of you. Guys, you hear that? Check it out right now. $1. Go ahead and pick it up, because, I mean, you want some amazingly inspirational words just for you for only $1. I mean, that's a cost of like less than a Big Mac these days. So go ahead and thank you for that, guys. That's amazing. Very generous for sure. Thanks again. And guys, you know what? With that, I think this is wrapping up in another episode of Office on Mission podcast. Renzo, thank you again. Your journey has reminded us that our unique experiences and perspectives are not only valuable, but they contribute to the literary world in so many different ways. Your success shows that authenticity and dedication to one's craft can really resonate deeply with readers across all cultures. So remember to check out Still, only $1, and follow Renzo's work on social media. We're going to put all of the links in the description. And until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep pursuing your mission. Have an amazing day. Be sure to check out the next episode. Have a great day.
As we close another inspiring episode, remember, every best-selling author was once just a person with a story to tell. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, inviting you to write the next chapter of your success story at authorsonmission.com. Your audience is waiting, your wisdom is ready, and your book is next.